Good evening, Dr. Orlando and fellow students. Good evening, it's Brian Bailey again. I'm doing my presentation for the first project for the week two of the course. And I opted, because I'm having problems trying to download Jing, I had permission from Dr. Orlando, thank you, to put my presentation on YouTube. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the project and talk about and refer to some of my notes. Okay. All right. First off, a little background. Okay. My specialty is special education, mathematics, and social studies, and I really consider myself a really good math teacher, and I really enjoy teaching mathematics. So what I did was I modified a lesson plan I used as a mathematics lesson plan with my GED students in the Florida prison system, as well as with my students currently at the junior high school I teach in 8th grade mathematics, which is basically pre-algebra, positive, negative sign numbers, and the skills that they need to know, such as add, subtract, multiply, and divide positive numbers, which is the basis of all algebraic and geometry questions. Okay, so I will attach the lesson plan to you, Dr. Orlando, for you to look at. Okay, all right. So the assignment centers around what I believe is centers around 6 questions. Okay, the 6 questions are: all right, what do I know? What do I want to know? What am I trying to measure, determine, or define? How will I collect and collect and send the info? How will I report the collected info, and who are the interested stakeholders and planning and conducting this assessment? Okay. So, the first question is part 1. What do I know? Well, from experiences from alternative education and public school education, it's a pretty sad fact. A lot of adults and young teenagers do not know the basics and of positive, negative operations for positive, negative numbers, and number theory and number sense. And they are both quite necessary skills to have for either if you're in alternative education, where the TABE or the GED are the educational goals, or here in the state of Florida, the FSA, which is the new version of the old FCAT, really puts heavy emphasis on this type of mathematics skill. So I know that when I were to give a formal or even an informal assessment on signed numbers, I know a lot of my students will flop will basically flop on the test and not do well at all. Okay, so next question I ask, what do I want to know? What skills do these folks need whether my alternative ed students or my public school students? What are their weak areas? Where do they need the remediation? And what can I do to help them become successful and retain this information, and to also kind of apply it using Bloom's taxonomy of education? I'm sorry, I take that back. Webb's depth of knowledge, on where they can analyze, synthesize, and apply the information. Okay, so how would I go about doing this with what do I want to know? Okay, and again, I look at it both ways. Speaking from experience as a corrections educator in adult education, the assessments we would give are known as the TABE, Test of Adult Basic Education, and or the GED. And in public schools, we do a lot of teacher-created assessments, and also practice FSA computerized and written tests as well. And I really want to know 4 major concerns. Okay, can they add, subtract, multiply, and divide positive, negative numbers, sign numbers? Okay, so that's what I need to know. Where are they at? Where do they need help? Where can I steer them in the right direction? Okay. The third question that this project centers around, and when I cite my teaching experience, what am I trying to measure, determine, or define? Okay. Well, and I'll break this down into 3 parts. Okay. First off, how will I measure the students' performance? All right. Adult education, it is basically, it's pretty much standardized. It's the test, adult basic education, the TABE, and or the GED. Those are the 2 major assessments that are used in adult education. Plus, maybe sometimes some teacher-made assessments, but it's a pretty rigid system. Okay. As for measuring in public schools, you get a little bit more leeway with teacher-made assessments, but also you can create computer-made assessments, and even the practice FSA and the real FSA test, which 8th graders must complete before they pass from 8th grade to 9th grade years. All right. So how do we determine that my students? So if we were to hypothetically say, all right, we'll have a 20-question test, 5 questions each, and add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And I can see that if the students can get 3 out of 5 right in each skill set, then that tells me that they just need a little bit of remediation, maybe a little bit of strategies, and I can retest them again at a certain time, and they will do well in beginning algebra or geometry. However, if they have partial mastery, which is usually 2 out of 5 or 1 out of 5 or 0 out of 5, then those students will need a lot more work. Okay, so I want to define of what skills, what strategies do I need to target each student individually, because one strategy may not work with another student, but will work well with another. So that definition would be, I believe, in an individual education plan and using strategies to looking at the assessments, talking to the students, even probably talking to his other classroom teachers on what strategies he or she, the students, will need. Okay? All right. So drawing back from my lesson plan here, okay, let me refer back to here. Okay, some questions, some quick details. All right, so I talked about what do I know. Well, I know looking at prior TABE scores when a person comes into the prison system, the mathematics skills on the mathematics test on the TABE are just down the toilet, plain and simple. In public schools, there's a little bit more, like I said, a little bit more leeway. There's a lot more interventions for RTI 1 and 2 students, and more strategies and response to interventions to help the students. Where it's more the teachers kind of guide the students, where in alternative education, the student has to take the initiative and to do his or her assignments. Okay. All right. So referring back to my attached lesson plan, Dr. Orlando, what do I want to know? All right. So then basically what I do is I can look at several things right off the bat for an alternative education. I can see that prior TABE scores, interviews with the students, asking them several questions. I could, in the classroom where I draw my lesson plan from, I could put some questions on the board. I can put it with maybe a sports spin on it, such as football, basketball, real world relevant types of questions. Okay, in public school, pretty much the same way. A lot of the students are into stats, sports, and if you put it into, even a lot of times students are into food and cooking. And so you give them some real world applications. So like I said, with cooking, even credit cards, they always ask lots of questions about credit cards. But okay, so with that lesson plan, what I do is I had computer generated assessments and adult education through GED Academy and GED Top 50, in which through a bank of questions, I would have the students sit down and to show me several things, okay, to demonstrate several things. One, are they familiar with computer technology? Do they know how to use basic computer operations, okay, such as using the mouse, highlighting, clicking A, B, C, D. Also, just basically computational math skills, which is what integers are, okay, positive, negative numbers, okay. So that being said, I have the attached lesson plan. The fourth question that I think it really needs to be is how will I collect and send this information? Well, there are several ways, okay, from my experience in adult education, alternative assessments. Basically, the TABE and the GED are considered considered state documents, and so scores from those tests are all computerized, in which they're saved to a database, and then you use either a flash drive or a disk, and to upload and send email the information to my supervisors or former supervisors in Tallahassee, who will then look at the data and then pass it over to data entry, in which those scores will be entered into the inmate's records during his or her tenure in the Florida prison system. As for the local level, when I was the teacher and administrator, I would document their paper, their scores and their information and their academic lesson plans, basically just using the paper and pen method and highlighting and what skills they needed, and then I would select them, pull the materials from my library, and then give them their work from there. Okay. For my public school experience, basically, again, a lot of this information. For example, the FSA that we just completed here this month in mathematics, the scores are automatically uploaded to the Florida Department of Education in Tallahassee, and they're looked at, purviewed by really educational staff or teachers and administrators such as myself or you, Dr. Orlando, or some of our other cohorts in this class. And they'll say, okay, this student here is still struggling with multiplication of integers or division. And so then eventually when the scores come back to the school district, they disseminate it out to the administrators and the teachers, who then will probably take the first part of early next year and maybe take a month or so when the school year starts in August or September, and spend time reviewing. And then when the teachers and administrators think there's been enough scaffolding using Webb's depth of knowledge, then they can go on to the harder stuff, such as in Algebra 2 and or geometry. Okay, so let's see. So now the question is, how could I collect and report the collected info? Well, I kind of touched on that again with the Florida Department of Corrections. The tests are computerized. They're saved to a disk or to a flash drive, and then they're emailed in a packet to my administrators in Tallahassee, and entered into a database in which pretty much all DOC staff have access to in order to determine, an inmate's readiness to take another TABE or a GED test. Okay, on the public school side, kind of same philosophy. The Florida Department of Education has a computerized version called FSA, in which you go in as an administrator, you create a test, and then the students go in using a password and an ID, and then they take the 40-50 created test that's needed. And again, due to 21st century ISTE skills and Common Core, we're looking for make sure is, can the students really start using Webb's depth of knowledge and computerized skills, so eventually whether they go to college or into the job force or workforce, do they have the basic skills that's needed to help them be successful. Okay. All right, so now the fifth question is, how will I report the collected info? All right, basically I answered that, but again, you can look at my lesson plan that I sent as an email attachment, and I'll give you a lot clearer picture on what it is altogether. All right. Now coming to question number 6, and this is where everything is all combined together. Okay, the question asked, Dr. Orlando, you asked this question, is who are the interested groups in planning and conducting the needs assessment? Okay, I'll answer that 2 ways. The first way, from an adult education, basically it comes down to the inmate, whether he or she has a high school diploma, the on-site educator / administrator at the local prison where the person is assigned to. All right. Sometimes it could be the assistant warden will also be on hand to when we have a team conference with the inmate, and we will say, okay, inmate so-and-so, you will do this, this, and this, okay? And that you will be in school X days of the week, and you will be focusing on your so-called integers, positive, negative numbers. All right, and it's beneficial all the way around for an adult education because one, the student is getting the remediation that he or she needs, and to develop that sense of self-confidence that he or she lost when a lot of times they just stopped going to school, dropped out of school, or didn't go back to school for economic reasons. Two, it gives the teachers / administrators at the local prison a sense of satisfaction that they're actually trying to help somebody, to do something positive, and to help a person get their life back on track. The assistant wardens and the wardens who participate in this like to see inmates getting tested, and they want to see people getting lots of inmates getting tested, and inmates getting their high school diploma and/or vocational diplomas, so that we can try to take a huge bite out of the recidivism rate here in Florida, which is almost 30%, and it's about the same nationally. Okay, all right. So let's go to the public side of it for a minute. Okay, all right. And the needs assessment, there's a few more people involved. Well, besides the students, teachers, administrators, or principals. All right. Actually, I would also include the parents in this too. And there's a lot of times where parents can say, "Hey, my son or daughter just doesn't seems to struggle with positive, negative sign numbers and their skills. Can you please focus on that with my child?" Okay. All right. There's one way to plan and conduct a needs assessment right there. Second way, with the students, say at the beginning of the school year, starting in August, you have, like, say, a quick 20-question quiz for them. That too will give you some kind of needs assessment right there. Another way, interviewing the students, getting back some kind of feedback from them at the end of the class period, and say, can you just put down a few sentences on this note card, so it kind of gives me an idea, what do I need to improve, what do you need help with, okay? The administrators who here in Florida are really good. Lots of them are trained to read the appropriate data and needs assessments. We'll put the students in class periods where they'll have one or two remediation teachers, such as myself, and giving them the one-on-one or a small group, or even sometimes the whole class instruction, to give them the pointers that they need to pass the particular math skills. All right, and then ultimately the school board itself, when they get the results, and they say X number of students did this, and this on the FSA, or this is graduated. The school boards love to see graduation numbers, and they want to see success rates. Okay, so Dr. Orlando, that is my spiel on the first project for this week. And I hope that I did answer a lot of questions here. And like I said, they were centered around those 6 questions. What do I need to know? What do I want to know? What am I trying to measure, determine, or define? How will I collect and send the info? How will I report the collected info? And what are the interested groups in planning and conducting the needs assessment? Again, having been in education for alternative education and public schools, I bring a different and a unique aspect to answering the questions both ways. So this concludes my project, and thank you for watching my video. Have a good night.